Alright, my name is Paul. I'm 50 years old. I come from Birmingham. I grew up there till I was about 18 years old. I left Birmingham because I struggled at home, and the way that I dealt with the way that I felt was to use alcohol and drugs. I got involved with crime very early on. And as a result of that, I didn't finish school. I tried to get a job, which was an apprenticeship in engineering, but I didn't finish that. I ended up in prison at 15, and after a serious assault that left me in a coma, I had no choice but to leave Birmingham. I became a father at 20, and after having the parenting that I did, where I wasn't even taught how to brush my own teeth or any guidance whatsoever, I didn't really know how to be a father. So yeah, that was a real struggle, and I found myself joining the army at 23, which I stayed in for a few years. I wasn't kicked out of the army, but I was kind of pushed out, and they put it down to medical discharge, they called it at the time, but it was because I didn't fit in, and the reason that I didn't fit in was because I was bullied when I was younger, and after a period of time in school, I just flipped one day, and I think that was a combination of how I felt within my family, my struggles with myself outside, and being bullied, and that kind of low self-worth. And I realised that I could fight back, and that kind of changed my life totally, because then I began beating bullies up, I guess, and I used that as an excuse to justify my anger. And while I was in the army, I watched 3 guys get bullied severely to the point where they were like suicidal, and you can't really escape in there. So I came back off leave one day and stuck up for them, and that basically ended my career in the army. I became homeless when I left Leamington Spa as a heroin addict, and ended up in Brighton with a friend trying to pick up some money, which was supposed to be over a weekend, but found myself homeless from day one, and having to survive on the street, really. For me, which was different from other people that I saw, when I realised where I was kind of at and the situation I was in, it was kind of a relief, because my life was an absolute mess. All that I could concentrate on and even handle was my drug using. So it kind of made things simple, apart from the guilt and shame that I had about about ending up kind of where I was, and then I just kind of lived each day, just finding ways and means to earn the money for the drugs I was using, which all became about the street and street using, street crime. And I think the thing that I felt most, or that I would say anybody living on the street would struggle with the most was that kind of not feeling a part of society more and more each day. And I could see that people would look at me, I'd sit there in my own guilt and shame, looking at families, knowing that I had children of my own, and not being able to be a father or parent, and wishing that I was these people that I saw, that I kind of... Yeah, so the things that I kind of remember being difficult on the street were just kind of feeling less and less a part of society, more each day. And I'd sit there and, you know, begging for money, looking at families and men with their children and thinking, you know, I'd do anything to have that back, or that they look so happy, and how I thought I should be or wanted to be. And I could see that most people would kind of pretend that I wasn't there. And the thing that I probably wanted most wasn't the money that people were giving to me, or the bits of food, which I appreciated. I could get all that myself. Was help, really. Being able to talk about how I felt emotionally, or the things that I'd been struggling with, how I felt about myself, and the difficulty that I had, the 10 worst addicts or most chaotic users at that time. And I apparently was on this list. I didn't know that. That's just what the services compiled. And that meant that I was eligible to go into, or be funded to go into, a rehab. But they had to get me in a place where I was able to access that, which sadly is either prison, hospital, or prison, hospital, or something along those lines. I can't think of another example, really. So pretty low, rock bottom place. And I had two outreach workers at that time that worked with some of the services, but mostly with someone that I got involved with. And through that, my parents were called, and they came to the hospital in Manchester at the time. That's where I'd ended up, and they took me back to theirs, and I had to do a full, ruthless detox with no substitute, no support, no help, because I didn't have a local doctor, and I had to come off all these drugs, and I'd been on methadone as well. The thought of walking away or coming away from that, or letting go, was extremely difficult. So yeah, the process of looking at those two things together was really hard, and I went through a cycle, which many homeless addicts do, of finding it really difficult to look at both myself and how I fit into society now, with the shame and the guilt that I had, and that constant craving for something to change the way that I felt, that I'd eventually relapse and go back to the street. And that became a cycle as well, is that every time I used, I would end up back on the street. So the homelessness street thing never really went away. So, yeah, I went through rehab numerous times, and even though the time that I spent on the street got shorter, my health suffered more and my mental health suffered more. So really it's been a battle to sort those two things out together, which I have now managed to do. I spent 10 years clean, started to educate myself and started to help other vulnerable adults myself. And the thing that kind of took me back to a relapse was I'm starting to feel much easier within society because I'm able to acknowledge the difficulties that I have living in society, if that makes kind of sense. So now I can admit that I suffer with depression, that I suffer with anxiety, that I have trauma that I need to look at all the time, that things trigger me, that relationships are difficult, that I can isolate myself really quickly and shut the world out, just as I have learned to do before. And I tackle that on a daily basis, and I cope with it much better today. So my life's changed a lot, and I'm not homeless today. And that's only through support of other people and a kind of support of other people and my own awareness, and I try and help other people with that stuff too, and that helps me learn more about myself. And that's kind of what I do today, really. I work with young people who have homelessness issues, and that hasn't stopped me doing the things that other people do, which is, going to the gym, learning how to teach fitness to other people, which gives me something to focus on. And I'm also hoping to start a course which is an hour's course that I'll do for free in the community, but I will be able to earn money from corporate firms by teaching people how to live with stress, to be mindful, to kind of cope with everyday difficulties, simple things like simple yoga poses, and that's kind of it.